Unserious. That is the key word that we're going to hone in on today's show because according to Kyle Neubeck of Philly Voice, the Los Angeles Clippers have been unserious in their trade conversations for James Harden. Now, this is the report from Neubeck, who honestly is one of the better Sixers beat reporters out there right now. He's been in his bag over the last couple of years. He said this in a mailbag over the weekend. Even the Clippers, Harden's preferred destination, have been fairly unserious about what they're willing to give up in order to acquire the beard. The prevailing sentiment seems to be that Harden is still valued, but on the team's terms, which is a shift from the franchise-defining clout that James Harden had at his peak. Now, this is interesting on a couple of fronts here because from my view, I can certainly see where the Los Angeles Clippers are coming from, but also I can see where other teams across the NBA have this thought process of their views of James Harden because I've said this a couple of times here on the program. James Harden opted into the final year of his deal with the Philadelphia 76ers at $35.5 million because he realized he wasn't going to get that amount of money from any other team in free agency. He also realized that no team, because of the declining play, declining athleticism, and another playoff flameout, was going to give him the years that he was looking for in free agency as well. James Harden still thinks that he's a superstar player. He still wants superstar money, and he wants superstar treatment. But James Harden, I'm here to tell you that everybody across the NBA doesn't view you the way that you view you. You are a declining asset who's not the star that he once was. Are you still a productive player? For sure, but the flaws and blemishes in your game are very, very concerning. You look at the downward trajectory that his career has gone down the last 4 years. In 2019-2020, he played 68 games with the Houston Rockets, his final full season in H-Town. He was really good that year. And I know that we're in 2023, about to embark in a few months on the 2023-2024 season, but this wasn't that long ago. 34 points per game, 7.5 assists, 6.5 rebounds. He shot 35.5% from three-point range. He becomes unhappy with the situation in Houston. He goes to training camp overweight. It looked as though he stopped trying. Because of that, numbers go down that year because he hurt his hamstring, probably because he wasn't in tip-top condition. 24.5 points per game. So the points per game goes down by 10. And yes, you could say Chase, Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, those were his teammates. Yeah, but if you remember, they played like 8 games together. Still a really good distributor of the basketball. His rebounding numbers went up. Still pretty good three-point numbers. And then with the Nets and 76ers the following year, the points per game continued to go down. 22 points per game, 10 assists, 7+ rebounds, 33% from three. I will give credit where credit is due in saying that James Harden this past season was a solid player, a borderline all-star who led the NBA in assists with 10.7, career best assist to turnover rate, and his 38.5% mark from long range was the second best of his career. But the eye test told us all that James Harden didn't have that fast, quick, elite first step, and he didn't have that finishing ability at the rim that has made him a very good offensive player throughout his NBA career. That's not just the eye test. That's also the numbers here. Harden averaged 13.5 drives to the basket per game last year, 10 fewer than he did 5 seasons ago. He scored fewer points off those drives than he had since 2013-2014, a career low 25% of his shot attempts came at the rim, and Second Spectrum tracks a stat called blow-by rate, a measurement of how often a ball handler dusts his defender off the dribble. In his last full season in Houston, Harden blew by his defender 10.1 times per 100 drives. Last year in Philly, that rate down to 3.7 per 100. Those numbers are pretty glaring. And they tell a pretty important story that Harden, the player, is starting to decline. Harden, the athlete, starting to decline. Now, do I think that he would be a good fit for the Los Angeles Clippers as a guy who can initiate the offense, get downhill, pressure the rim, set up Kawhi Leonard and Paul George for sure, but they're not going to give up too much for him unless they get backed into a corner. And so far, the leverage hasn't been on the side of the Philadelphia 76ers here to back them into that corner. Now, if it gets to a point where James Harden is the missing ingredient for the Clippers and they have to budge by giving up a Terrence Mann because they believe Harden could be the piece to get them over the top, then maybe they could be talked into a deal and Philadelphia could get those assets back that Daryl Morey is seeking. Harden's delusion also on display last year because the offense to start the year, he was better when he was the third option. And the Sixers as an offense were better when James Harden was the third option. Joel Embiid, the number one. Tyrese Maxey, who we're about to talk about. Stay tuned for that. Some pretty telling numbers for him. Was the number two option. James Harden at number three. That's when the Sixers offense was at its best. Doc Rivers even said after the year, 3/4 of the way through the season, in the NBA playoffs, James Harden then became that guy who he wanted to be and was in Houston, where he thought he was the number one offensive threat. And what happened? Sixers offense late in games would fall apart like they did in Game 6. The ball would die often because he dribbles and milks the shot clock for far too long. Now, if you want more Sixers talk, make sure you subscribe to the show. We're going to continue to keep you in the know with everything on the James Harden front. Yeah, we're in a slow portion of the offseason, but our coverage won't stop. As you can see, we're a little more than 300 people away from 12,000 subscribers. We picked up a lot of new subs on our last video. Let's do the same here on today's show. Now, the 76ers in a tough predicament here with this James Harden situation because they need assets back for Harden, and they're kind of being held captive right now. They know that there's not really a market out there for him, especially when Damian Lillard is the marquee name in trade conversations right now. And they understand that they probably can't get equal value back for a guy. Yes, he's declining. His play diminishing to a certain degree, but still a good player in this league. And they want to be able to get borderline all-star potential back, or at least get pieces back that can help this basketball team. What's also of note here is how this situation can directly impact Tyrese Maxey. If James Harden does not return to Philadelphia, or he does and does not play, then Tyrese Maxey assumes a pretty large role within the Sixers offense. If Harden does come back, how does Maxey play as once again a guy who could be that third offensive option when he's shown the ability to be even better than that? Because Tyrese Maxey, without James Harden last year, played really, really well. You first take a look at his numbers with Harden and those two playing alongside one another. Number's still pretty good, right? 19 points per game, and this is a sample size of over 47 games, 3 assists, 2.7 rebounds, field goal percentage just under 49%, and his three-point percentage still very good. Still very elite with the shooting numbers here at 43.4. Obviously, when Harden is off the floor and when Maxey is playing without him, he gets more shot opportunities. But just because he got more shot opportunities doesn't mean that the field goal and shooting numbers went down. They basically stayed the same, ladies and gentlemen. So that is a pretty interesting sample size here. Over 13 games as compared to, a much larger sample size that we just discussed, but still pretty glaring here because the points goes up to 24.8. The assist numbers go up because he had to distribute and pass the basketball a little bit more. Rebounding numbers go up because Harden does retrieve a lot of rebounds, and the field goal numbers still pretty damn good. 46.9% from the field and 43% from three-point range. I'll tell you this. Daryl Morey has a long-standing relationship with James Harden, and I understand that right now they might not have much of a relationship. If he tries to repair that relationship, just to repair it, given that they've known each other for a long time, and that comes at the cost of Tyrese Maxey and his development, that is not in the best interest of the Sixers organization. The best interest of the Sixers, take care of Tyrese Maxey and his development. Make sure you lock him up with that contract extension and have him be one of the pillars of your franchise. Work ethic, big smile on his face, big for the culture, and a guy who's not afraid of the big moment for an organization that shied away from the big moment for a really, really long time. Make sure you subscribe to us here on Philadelphia 76ers Now, approaching 12,000 subscribers. We're going to continue to really break down all of the latest 76ers news and rumors right here on the show. And you know that I'm really higher on Tyrese Maxey, right? So if you think that he could become an all-star player, type his jersey number, that big old 0, down in the comment section. He is not a 0 as a player. And if you want to interact with me on Twitter and Instagram, you can find me there at Chase_Senior. I made it easy for Sixers fans out there and for everybody. It's the same handle on both platforms. Thanks to everybody for watching the show today. I also host and cover the Eagles for Eagles Now. So if you're getting the football itch, you can check me out over there as well.